All right, if you brought art in, you can come up one at a time, and I'm going to start taking everybody's stuff. All right, come on up if you're ready.
I heard the Kelly telling niggas going crazy. I love it. You like a lady. Fuck your team burned out, cremation. Make it creepy, yeah, we be crazy. Throw that ass back, call me and I can get it close. I can tell you gone on the close. Yeah, I'm what you say. Talking to me like you do, baby. Talking like you trying to do things. Now that body got to run it like you say, baby. You make me drown in that ooh, touche, baby. I'm heavy in that water, Bobby touche, baby. And you know I'm slaughter like I'm Jason. That's why I got it on safety. Like the way shit on brown. I'm probably saying me around. When I was you, all I get it was you.
That is absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Which one is your right?
Question, tell me how you feel about this. Tell me before you get this. Make my own fun, and I make my own meals. I was thinking and I should. Shoes on my feet, I'm falling. I'm wearing, I'm falling. I'm rocking, I'm falling. I depend on me. I'm wearing, I'm falling. I'm living, I'm falling. I'm driving, I'm falling. I depend on me. Charlie, how your angels get down like that? Girl, not the end of you get down like that. Charlie, how your angels get down like that? Tell me how you feel about this. If you allow only if I won't I was on this cycle, not the evil that I get. Ladies, it ain't easy being independent. Question, I just like the talent that I brought. Bragging on the cash that I gave you was the front. You know the right, we should have told you to run. I don't know what else to give you what you want. On my way, I'm falling. I'm perfect, I'm falling. I'm lovely, I'm falling. Started spinning on me. I'm falling. I'm crazy, I'm falling.
I have yours.
Money on the budget, girl, I wanna touch you. I'm only touching when nobody touch you. If I die down, my love still want you. They say the one that'll take you broke. They be the one that'll take you home. Even though I'm not the one that gave you the stones on your leg, you know how you make me home. Everybody talk out about pronounce. I do it to you, cat, for a large amount. When the people come, you know where to be found. I'll be around till the winner is around. You go, girl, stand up in your palm. Why you can't laugh my thoughts? There you go. What must I do if I can't how you baby, like I need only one for you. I won't be on
You should dress up like a rugrat.
You should listen with the Ninja Turtles.
That
Yeah, my brother would love for being a Ninja Turtle.
Tommy.
Tommy.
Oh.
And you would love
There we go.
What's up?
Are you ready? Oh, that's my son. I have a different laptop, so I have my work laptop today. All right. Class.
Yay! Is that your son?
That is my youngest. That's my youngest son.
What's his name?
His name's Zachary. He's 12. He goes
How
to
many
the
other
Aces at
sons?
Chase. I have one other son. He's 17.
You should be up there too, lovely.
Yeah, it rotates pictures. It changes pictures. So, it's last class. So we got a lot of stuff that we're going to do. A lot of stuff we're going to talk about. All right? Hello. Come on in, find a seat, grab some food. We're going to get started. All right? So, today's class is going to be split up. Today's class is split up. We're going to talk about composition. Okay? We're going to talk about composition, and we're going to talk about final projects. Okay? So and then I'm throwing a curveball at you all. So, you get a curveball thrown very shortly. Okay? So, huh? A curveball. What's a curveball? A curveball is a surprise. Okay? So, all right. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to watch a video on composition. Okay? All right. Actually, we're going to watch the rule of thirds video first.
Oh, you looking for me? What are you saying going on? What are you looking at? He's like,
There we go. All right. Everybody watching? This is important. I promise you're not going to want to miss anything we talk about today.
One of the most important artistic principles in a work of art, and a decision you miss on a composition can sometimes determine whether your painting is a success or something that doesn't feel quite right. For those who struggle with how to compose a scene or what makes for an ideal composition, should look at the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is a tried and tested artistic principle that has been around for centuries, guiding artists on how to construct and design their paintings. Simply put, it is a rough guide or rule to help you compose an image whilst also drawing attention to a subject's focal point or main point of interest. To help you visualize this rule, simply divide a painting or scene by applying 2 horizontal lines and 2 vertical lines, equally spaced apart. The theory is that any strong horizontal or vertical features in your scene should follow one of the lines on the grid, instead of placing it in the middle of the page, making it too obvious. The rule of thirds also provides you with 4 possible areas of interest, ideal for focal points. To identify these, simply place your focal point or place of interest in or near where the lines fall to make a cross. For example, let's look at this landscape scene. As you can see, the horizontal line of where the top of the trees meet the sky falls on the lower third horizon line. By doing this, it has given me more space to paint the clouds and canopy of the tree. If we bring in the 2 vertical lines, you can see how the line on the left matches the tree. In the case of this expressive painting, the rule of thirds can still apply. The main flower in the bottom right-hand corner of the painting appears on the point where the vertical and horizontal lines cross. The rule of thirds can also work for portraits and figures. In the case of this portrait, the centre of the child's face meets the upper third line, while the 2 vertical lines follow the shape of the chair and body. The same applies for this figure painting, where the 2 heads fit on the top horizontal line at the same time as the pair of vertical lines. The more you're aware of the rule of thirds, the more you can see it used and fit on many famous works of art. But remember, the rule of thirds is just a guideline and not a hard set rule. Learn to develop your own instinct for what looks good in a composition and what works well for you.
Alright, this video is longer. This is the
Again, our proportions
this is the
composition is perhaps one of the most.
this video is, he is a very well-known art tutor, okay? And he's gonna talk about a couple different things when it comes to art. No, I'm sorry, I'm using the other video. I decided you guys weren't gonna like him.
What, the moves?
You're noobs.
No, we're not.
That might hurt a little bit.
I didn't call you boobs, I called you noobs. No, don't worry about it. Listen, I learned a lot from this video. You guys are newbies at doing a lot of this stuff. You're learning new stuff about composition, okay? I think you're gonna like this video better, okay? Okay, it's not as long as the other one, so I thought you might like that, number 1. And he goes over stuff, I think, in a little bit easier way. I don't think that he is kooky or weird. I don't think that you guys will have an issue with him. He's not like Dr. Brad.
I don't like that.
It's scary. Well, this
Then if you put in some grass or put in any deep, then welcome to Composition for Dudes. Now this isn't just for beginners, this can be for anyone really. There's going to be a lot of useful facts and info in this video, and it's going to be super intuitive. I'm going to draw a bunch of pictures and do a bunch of things, so it's going to be really easy to follow along. So I've sort of split up composition into 3 sort of tiers or sections. Now composition applies for anybody, like really if you're a photographer, a videographer, if you make game design, if you're an illustrator or a painter or anything to do with art, you need to know composition. So I've split this up into flow, which is the rules, leading lines and negative space. I've also split this into color and focus, which is color and focus, and then the story, which is the content, the implied story, also the style and the emotion. Now I'm going to go through all of these sections one by one and show you if you master all of these together, it's going to make your artwork or whatever you create way better, and you will get really good at composition. So let's start with number 1, which is flows. So I'm going to draw these 2 little scenes here with compositions, and I'll show you how those 3 elements make up flow, which are the rules, the leading lines, and the negative space. So if I draw a little beach scene here, I'll make a seagull or a bird, and then this can be the waves and the ocean and a little sunset, some sand. pretty simple scene, not much to it, but it's a nice scene that has a good composition. And there's a couple reasons for this. One is it follows the rule of thirds. So if I draw sort of like a checkbox, like a dice,
Ladies,
you can actually see each one of these points, the third,
I promise
side,
you
the
don't
ocean,
want to miss what's
perfectly
going to be
lies
said.
on each of those actually cross sections of the rule of thirds. It also flows nicely with the leading lines. So leading lines are basically where your eye looks and what sort of directions the image guides you in. And you can see it sort of has this sort of pattern where you go around in a circle as you look at it. Where you look at the seagull, you look at the sun, you look back up to the seagull, and you just sort of have this nice sort of pattern or a circle. But if I then copy this image and we'll change it and we'll actually adjust the composition a little bit. So I'll sort of erase these little edges here and then draw in a little bit here. We've changed the composition. Now it's further up, the camera's looking more down, and the seagull and the whole sort of ocean, everything's right to the top. And this has totally changed those leading lines or lines of action, because we no longer have this nice sort of spiral and all this negative space framing the top of the bird and the sun. It's now right at the top of the frame, and your eyes just sort of want to look up. Everything just points straight up like a pyramid, and it sort of leads you outside of the photo. It's not really aesthetically pleasing. It sort of seems a little bit odd because your eyes just sort of naturally want to just go up and look out. Whether on the left, your eyes just naturally want to sort of cycle around and basically just keep in the middle. And that's how composition, just very, very simple thing, can actually affect that. It's just, all I did was just move it up a little bit out of the frame, but then it just sort of offsets the balance of the image a little bit. It changes the lines of action, it changes the rules that it leads by, and it also changes the negative space, which is what I'll show you right now. So definitely the sky here is a big form of negative space in this image. So if I just fill in the sky like that, you can see on the left there's a lot more negative space than on the right. And this sort of gives the impression on the left image of the negative space is sort of pushing down on all that sort of detailed section on the left, which is, you know, the waves and the sun and the pole, the sand and all of that. And it gives a nice balance. We've got this big detailed section and then this big sort of wall of blue that sort of frames the seagull. And then everything else is sort of kept nicely down to the bottom. If you go to the right, there's a lot more section of detail and a lot more sort of foreground that's happening. It almost feels like that's sort of pushing up. And we sort of lose the balance. On the right-hand side, there's too much of that where there's not much of a negative space. We can fix this. You could sort of color in the sand and try and make that another form of negative space, which would balance it a little bit. But then if you put in some grass or put in any details, you would lose that negative space. You'd be further adding in foreground elements and details, and it would make the image quite busy and there'd be a lot going on. If that's what you want to achieve, that could potentially work, but you need to know the impacts of this and how it actually changes your view of the image, because it all matters. All of this stuff matters a lot. So if we go through these sorts of things now, we've got the rules, which, you know, the Fibonacci spiral is a great rule if you haven't seen that. Also, we've got the rule of thirds. There's a bunch of different sort of rules for photography. I don't like to follow them too much. Saying that though, the Fibonacci spiral is interesting. It's a lot of nature, and rule of thirds is it just always works. If you take a photo of a tree and then a little sun, just think about, oh, okay, if I just quickly move that tree and the sun to be on those rule of third lines, it might just make it look a bit more interesting. Or if I want the tree to be right in the middle of the frame and that's the focus, that's fine too. But you just need to know how that will actually affect your scene. And then also think about the negative space above. If it's just a big blue sky and you've got all this dead space above the tree and the sun, is that good? Is that what you want? Do you want the viewer to look at all that negative space, or should you draw a little cloud up there, which can act as a bit of padding for the viewer to look back in? Another thing is with sort of lines of action is you can actually draw lines of action before you even create the image. So here I've just created a couple of lines and I'm turning this into an image. So that's supposed to be the Batman signal, and then we've got some little buildings behind and a little city. So I started with a couple of random lines which I thought were interesting, made a pretty interesting composition out of that image. So that shows you how strong you can make lines and make them a strong part of your image. And next thing is also converging lines. This is a little sort of technicality with composition. It's also to do with coloring as well, which I'll talk about later, but you don't want lines to essentially be sort of overlapping. Like you can see the pole here and the sunlight and the bird and the sun, all of the edges of those are overlapping. And it's what's called converging lines. It doesn't look too good. If I just quickly redraw this in a slightly different way, let's say I just move a couple of meters over on the beach so there's a bit more of a gap, it's fine. But if that seagull was right on the edge of the water and overlapping the sun and overlapping the light trail of the sun, it will look a bit odd. There'll be a lot of things all sort of corresponding on the same point. It doesn't look too good. So think about the Fibonacci spiral, think about other rules of composition. Also think about the lines of action and how they lead you throughout the image, and what sort of is appealing to look at. And then also think about the negative space when you're creating photos, because negative space is just as important as the actual photo itself, because there's lots of different elements that make up a photo. And now that brings us to color and focus. So these are obviously made up of color and focus. I'm going to draw a little box here. It's always hard to draw boxes freehand. So what's going to be in this box is a composition. I'm going to make two of them. They'll be identical compositions, but I'll change the colors. So I'll let you see this. I'll speed it up and just
There's a lot of
scene. All the colors are different. Now, these aren't necessarily good or bad, they're just different, and they give very different effects, and they change the way that you view the image, and they give off also sort of different feelings, and yeah, they're just different. So if we start with the left one, sort of probably the most noticeable part is the converging colors. Just like I talked about converging lines previously, we have converging colors. The cliff face is the same color as the sand, and the guy just happens to be, well, the girl actually just happens to be wearing a bluey green jacket, which is the exact same color as the ocean. The next thing is all of the portion, or sort of the lower portion besides the sky, is a bit of a warmer hue. The green is a bit more shifted towards yellow, which makes it the blue is shifted a bit more towards green. We've got some autumn colors of the trees, and then we have this blue sky at the top, which makes this big divide in color. Whether it's on the right, it's a bit more sort of uniform, there's cooler colors all throughout. And then, yeah, we have a lot of these converging colors that just really change the flow of the image. Now, a way you can potentially get around this, or sort of alter this, is with focus. So if I go around and cut out this girl here as good as I can, actually, I'll make it the opposite of that. No. So what we need to do is, if sometimes you have problems like this, and you can just tell the person to go chuck on a different jacket, or maybe when you're painting or making a character, you actually change the color yourself. But if you can't control those things, you can actually change the focus or position of the composition. So maybe basically just pull the background, they stand out a lot more. Those colors aren't as obvious, and it really just sets apart the foreground and the background, and actually changes that composition. A lot of people don't think of focus when I think of composition, but that's definitely something important. And not only focus, but also the saturation of colors as well. So even if we go back over to the right, we have a bright pink dress, and it just draws your eye straight to it. Now, I chose pink because it was just a bright color, but another thing to think about is sort of actually color groups. So for example, blue and orange are actually complementary colors opposite each other on the color wheel, and we could make that dress orange instead of pink. But if the sun was orange, maybe there'd be a bit too much orange in the scene. I would really want it to stand out, so I'll actually make it pink. Even though technically orange would look the best compared next to that blue, it doesn't look the best for the whole scene, because I want it to be a unique color that's not anywhere else. So there's a lot of color groups and color theory. I've actually done a whole video on color theory if you want to see that too. I'll have the link somewhere on the screen about color theory. And color theory definitely plays a big part. You can also change the saturation of colors. If we just want to change the saturation of that whole background, it will make that foreground stand out a lot more too. Or we could also scroll through the hues. Maybe we want to make the background a bit cooler and the foreground a bit warmer. There's a lot of things we can do to separate sort of aspects of the image and break it up and draw your eyes in different areas. If you want to draw your eye in one place, make it a lot more brighter and saturated. And now for our final section, which is story. So I'm going to draw two boxes again and show you how composition and the content within your composition can imply story about it. So we'll draw a super simple scene here, a couple of sand dunes, a little person standing in the middle of the sand dunes, and then the sun. Very simple, but it gives us an instance of vibe. And I'll recreate the same scene the exact same way, except one difference. Instead of the person in the middle, they'll be to the right, and they'll be pointing to the left, and they'll be walking. So that just sort of changes a whole bunch about the scene, and it's just one tiny little difference. But suddenly we have a bit of a story. Instead of just standing there, they're actually moving to the left, and you go, oh, why are they moving to the left? Maybe there's a beautiful oasis just over the sand dunes, and that's what that person is actually walking towards. And obviously I'm drawing an actual oasis here, but even if you didn't have that oasis drawn, it would actually imply a bit of story. And it was literally just as simple as moving the person over a little bit, making them face one direction. You get a totally different story to the scene. So simply moving elements around can change a lot of things about your story. And then if we had that person flipped and walking away, then it's going, oh, instead of walking to the oasis, he's walking away from the oasis. Like, why? Well, why are they doing that? You know, that looks pretty good down there. What's making them leave? They're falling out with the owners of the oasis. What's going on? And suddenly you've created this whole story of possibilities and things just by moving this person. And it's really that simple. There's a lot you can do with just simply positioning of elements to create a lot of stories. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to create another scene, but this time we're going to focus on content. So content, what's in the scene? Let's actually give ourselves a list of content. So we'll have some buildings, we'll have a little car that sort of looks like a cloud, we'll have a person, a road, of course, and a tree. Pretty easy content, pretty, vanilla, I guess. So let's start with scene one. We're going to draw a road. This is going to have a bit more perspective, I guess. So I want to be a bit closer to this car. I'm really, really bad at drawing cars. So yeah, give me a bit of, be nice. Be nice. So here's going to be my terrible car, and it's going down the road. So we don't really know if it's moving or not. I guess from this perspective and from the angle, it makes you think that it's sort of racing down the road really fast, and it's giving this story. Simply just by that one little thing, just by adding a bit of perspective, you're at the front of the car, it's sort of down low, it gives story. Okay, it's a race car, it's got a spoiler, so it probably is a race car. We've got a nice happy driver, there's our person, let's draw in our buildings, let's draw in our tree, and there we have a scene with that content. Now on the right, I'll follow the same line of action. I'll actually copy that from the left-hand side, and the same sort of perspective, but then I'll take the camera out and actually lower the perspective. So the same angle, but then I've lowered the perspective and sort of zoomed in, like I'm standing on the building looking down at the same scene. And although it's the exact same content, I've moved the driver so he's standing on the wall now instead of in the car. It's the exact same content in almost the exact same layout, but it can give a totally different story with the same content. And this is all about composition. So instead of a race car driver driving down the road, it could be some tense action scene. Maybe on the right, this could be an opening scene for a shot. So maybe this is a movie, and you're actually trying to get a bit of an idea of what the city's like. And it starts with this guy, and he parks his car at the front of a cafe, and then goes in and has a coffee. And this is basically your opening scene to go, oh, okay, he's in a city, he's standing next to his car, and this is what it looks like. There's not a ton of sort of style or emotion. It's a pretty standard scene. But now what we're going to do is actually change the implied story and change a bit of the style and the emotion of this right-hand image by the use of color and shading. So I'm going to go for a bit of a stylistic approach. I'll follow sort of just a dual tone color scheme, and let's say it's going to be sunset, so there's going to be big shadows cast by all these big buildings, and the person sort of standing on the wall, half in shadow, half in the light. And the part that I want you to look at in the scene is obviously the person and the car. So that will be in the light, and then the rest of the elements will sort of be in shadow. And the sunlight's casting this nice orange light over the important parts. And this is how I'm using color to sort of direct the person to look at what I want them to look at. I'm also using it as a tool for my color scheme, because it looks cool for the color scheme, these sort of opposing colors with the greeny blue and the orange. And it gives a bit of a stylistic approach. It's going, okay, suddenly it's sunset. It changes the story. Suddenly we have a bit of a stylized sort of art style for this image, this sort of dual tone effect. And it creates a whole different story. Now it could be sort of like a sci-fi movie. And it just, it changes a lot simply just by changing the colors. And then if you go back over to the left, let's say we'll make the car pink, make it, have green wheels, and basically make it a bit more bright, a bit more punchy, a bit more sort of different color scheme. But then we go, okay, I still want the car to be the center of attention, so let's make all of the background a bit desaturated. Let's make the road just simple gray colors. We won't make any sort of bright colors in the road anywhere. Same with the buildings, the tree and everything. I'm just going to pick some standard sort of grey, sort of browny colors for the buildings. Make that one just a bit lighter color. And then also for the background, I'll just pick maybe like a blue, something like that, just sort of a dark desaturated blue, because we want this car to stand out. We want this car to be the focal point of the image. The rest of it is just sort of sits in the background. You might not even look at it. There could be a chase scene in a movie, and although these two images have the exact same content in them, or almost the exact same content, the left, all you really focus on is the car, and that's all you're thinking about. And on the right, you're thinking about this whole scene. and you're thinking about the story behind it, the time of day. And on the left, you're thinking about, oh, how fast is this car driving? What's he driving to? What's he driving from? Well, that's a cool car, I like the color of the car. It makes you think about totally different things, about the colors, the style. It implies totally different storylines, but they all have the exact same content. And that's how much it can drastically change your idea on imagery just based on the composition and what the actual content is within that composition. So before you leave, I've got one final challenge for everybody watching. I'm going to draw this quick scene here. I'm going to speed it up. And this scene is going to consist of 3 key elements that I've talked about in this video. And I want you to write in the comments what the answers are to this. Now, one of them, it's a bit up to your own sort of opinion, but there's definitely correct answers and not correct answers. So the challenge is there is a color scheme or a color group happening within the scene that definitely affects the way you look at the composition. I actually talked about this exact color scheme earlier on in the video. Next, I want you to tell me what the story is. Give me your take on what the story is on the scene. And then lastly, I followed a rule here. I followed some sort of composition rule that I talked about at the start of the video. Tell me what that rule is.
Okay. Challenge 1, color group. What color group is being used?
Complimentary.
Thank you. Who said complimentary? Good job. It is. Why is it complimentary?
Orange compliments blue.
And where is the eye being drawn to?
Oh, the orange?
It wants you to, most of the picture is done in blues, except for the one part where he wants you to focus your eye. We're going to skip number 2. Tell me what rule do you think is being followed? He talked about it. Go ahead.
The rule of thirds.
Not the rule of thirds. Does anybody remember what the other rule was? Starts with an F. Not fractions. Fib. Fibonacci spiral. So Fibonacci spiral, what that means is that it's a mathematical term. But basically what it means is that your eye circles around to catch all of this, and it ends up coming back up into it starts. This is your focus point, but he's drawing your eye. Watch this. He draws your eye from here. He draws it up with the yellow, which complements, which feeds into the orange. Brings your eye up, and then what happens? He brings the yellow back around into here, and around. So the Fibonacci spiral, there's all kinds of videos on it on YouTube. You could watch it. It is a very mathematical thing. I thought the rule of thirds were going to be an easier concept to kind of focus our attention on. Okay. So the story, everybody's going to see this in a different way. Give me some ideas. What do you see when you think of story when you look at this? Some people tell me what you see for a story.
Maybe he was thinking his life and stuff.
Okay. He's thinking about his life. What else? What else did people see when they look at this picture? What story does it tell you?
But he made it up to the top, and now he's looking down on everybody.
Oh, he's made his way up to the top of the ladder and he's looking down on everybody. That could be a positive or a negative thing. He thinks he's better than everybody and he's looking down upon them that way, or it's a victory, right? There you go. Who else has got a story? Tell me a story about the picture.
He's a superhero. Looks like he's watching the boat sail away.
He's watching the boat sail away. Maybe his long lost love is leaving him.
That's sad.
Oh, it is sad. What?
He's a superhero. He just saved the city.
Oh, he's a superhero. He just saved the city. So see how many different stories can come out of just looking at this one picture. Everybody's going to come at it from a different point of view and a different perspective. That's what art does. That's what your art does. So I passed out some papers to you. The first page is talking about diagonal lines. It's the rule of thirds. And it's using diagonal lines and how you can use diagonal lines. He talked a lot about going straight up and down. But we're going to use diagonal lines. You can use those with the rule of thirds. The back page has a few more ideas for rules. So if you notice, composition of where do we put the horizon line? By putting it straight across the page in the middle, if it doesn't follow the rule of thirds. So you want to kind of not have your horizon line directly in the center of your page. You want to have it moved up or moved down a little bit. Using design elements that create a visual path, just like with this picture. Okay, have some diagonal, horizontal, and vertical elements. So you want to have a mixture so that your eye is drawn through the story. Okay, don't start a visual path from an exact corner. So you don't want to start it just from exactly in the corner. You want to start it so it's not perfectly in the corner. Okay? And don't have objects leading in or out. The next page is implementing the rule of thirds. This is just some more options to give you some ideas for rules of thirds. Okay? Now turn to the very last page. I love you, ladies. So, I'm not saying it's a final exam, but this is your final drawing project with me. And this is for the art exhibit. Okay? It's 6 o'clock now. You have 1 hour to work on an item on this piece of paper. You can use any medium that you like. You have your colored pencils, you have your soft pastels, you have your drawing pencils, you have your charcoal. Anything that you'd like, you're going to use it for this piece of paper, and you're going to incorporate all of the things that we have learned and create a correctly composed image. Okay? You can sketch it out first in your sketchbook if you need to, but I'm giving everybody an hour to create a piece of art. Nope, you're going to draw whatever you want. No. You need to come up with your own image, and this is going to go into the art exhibit. What? This is going in as one of your final projects for the art exhibit. Huh? You can look up a picture, but you cannot copyright and use somebody else's and plagiarize another drawing. You can use your phones to look up ideas for inspiration, but your design idea must be your own.
To be honest, it's not.
Oh yeah. So everybody has until 7 o'clock. You can use your phones to look up to get ideas, but it must be your own art. It must be your own idea. You can do that, but if you want, you're still going to be able to do it. You're going to have 2 pieces of your final project. I want you to take more. Yes. You do today's project now, and then you have another paper that you're going to do. And that's what we're going to do over the next week. Whatever you want. For what? Oh no, anything that you want. You're gonna draw anything that you want. You can draw a landscape. You can draw a tree. You just have to draw anything. I want you to think about all of the different techniques that you've learned. Okay, let's get your art out of the way. Okay.
Why do you have to say that? Why do you have to say that?
It's okay. It's all right.
You should.
Can I see your papers?
Oh, you know what about my grandmother wrote this?
Yep. We just moved some out of the way. She had an accident. Okay. We're just gonna want to stand up, and just go grab a couple paper towels, just because the puddle underneath you on the floor. Okay. You can use anything that you'd like. Okay. No, I have an extra kit for you.
Oh,
So you can use, yes, I have a kit for you to use.
Does you?
No paint. Nope, you can use soft pastels, you can use colored pencils, drawing pencils, charcoal, but no painting today. This is just using dry ingredients.
Oh my Lord. There's no way to go for it.
You're gonna use that?
Wait.
Bro, I have my homework to do. I literally bring up.
We're not thinking about homework right now, we're thinking about your art.
Oh, no, she's asking why.
No, I don't want you to think about your homework right now. This is the one time you get to avoid it.
I had no homework. That's because I'm in high school. So I got no homework. That's not my problem. I got a homework. I got a biology test. I forgot how to do that. No, the little
No, you're not, you're drawing anything that you want today. Huh? Anything that you want. I don't know why.
You want to use that too?
I want you to think about drawing something you can incorporate that. You want to make something, make something more than that. Make a fishbowl, any drawing you want. But you just, I just want you to think about perspective, texture, color, composition, what medium you want. All of the different, your pencils, okay? You know, pencils, charcoal, soft pastels. Think about all the stuff, everything that's in your binders. Everything that's in your binders is a tool, ladies. You can use your sketchbook to sketch out your idea before you do it on your final project if you need to. But this is your final project. Huh? I told you I was throwing you a curveball to pay attention to composition. I told you, ladies, to pay attention. Ow!
Next time, let that go so I can keep my eyes closed.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Represents you and your people.
All right, I'm
Oh, right.
When you look it up, there's two frontiers, use this one.
Oh, okay.
I would have been.
This is the Wi-Fi that you're gonna use. And this is the password.
You're speaking to the people, don't you? Yo, look at her room.
Jalissa, why don't you can move right here and have room. There's also, I got all this open space. I don't need to sit. I'm here if you have questions, but I know you ladies can do this. Yes, you can. Think about what you like to draw and incorporate all of the rules that we have learned into it. I'm going to use an example. My example is somebody in here does like to draw things with aliens. So you can take the alien ideas and all you need to do is incorporate that into perspective, the rule of thirds, color, all of that. I didn't call you out.
If that wasn't your way of calling out, I guess not. I guess not.
I didn't say your name.
But then at the end, the whole like, the only thing you had to say was like, girl, you're the first person on.
I don't mean to scare anybody, but 13 minutes is gone. Yes, you can. Yes, ma'am. 1 hour to work on it. Come on.
You don't have to worry about.
All right. Because you guys got the jitters, I'm going to give you until quarter after, but that's it. Quarter after. That gives you 1 hour from now. Okay? Shake the jitters and draw, and all you need to do is think about composition. Think about all of the really cool stuff that we've learned. We've learned about colors. We've learned about perspective. We've learned about shading. I didn't bring my oil pastels. You can use the soft pastels. Yeah. We've learned about blending. So don't use the colored pencils. The soft pastels, not oil pastels. Oil pastels actually are oily. So just sketch out your idea, and then your final project is going to go in this. Okay. Whose piece of art is on the floor?
Regrets.
And you can give it back to me. And I want your other art too. I want you to maybe bring it back. The one that Mom posted. The one that was at the.
Oh, that's fire. You actually gonna try it? That's fire.
Remember, you're creating your own art.
Miss Kimmy, this is
But I want you to think about the rule of thirds and where he's falling. Okay. I want you to think about shading. I want you to think about what else is going on in the picture. And that can work, but you, as an element, to add more.
Oh. By the way.
Create a scene, create a picture. You want to have a whole picture, so don't get rid of it.
Just like that.
Use that as your starting point.
Not right now.
But you're creating a whole picture,
I
not
love
one
my
thing.
phone.
That's okay.
I love my timeline.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, that shows like almost.
No, you're not drawing the lines for the rule of thirds. It's only implied to help you get an idea for placement. If you have to lightly draw them, then you can, and then you can erase them.
I look, there's an alien in the back.
I had to give him something.
Yeah, it looks like you.
It is me.
She goes up with that one. If you think so. Will you be on your phone too long? You see, you start looking at you. You don't have no
Come on, YouTube.
What's this? I'm looking at somebody. I know.
Oh, wow.
I never. Wow. Try to be like your sister, like. She got the color already. Good for her. Why are you using a real hard pencil? Oh, it's on TV? Yes. Oh, I must be blind. I must be seeing something at your house. So you must be seeing something nice. Oh, I am. You got to draw that. No way. You're serious? You're not serious. There's no way you're serious with this. I'm just saying that in class. I'll be like, I told you, what are you gonna do? No. What? Nigga, that's what you think called, Rugrats?
Oh, yeah, I gotta compete with you.
That's, hey, Arnold.
Yeah, I gotta compete with you.
I don't look like that. Sorry, you ain't drawing. You look stupid. That's Yo, you wanna, if you ever wanna watch, just ask me. Yes. Arnold don't look like that.
He looks
He got a skinny body, though. I'm not saying that. He be wearing turtlenecks. You should tell you on his head.
I know you just put it. Wait, where is it?
No, it doesn't like this.
Strawberry. So is that many strawberries? So like,
This is easy, but how high? Hold on, Mom.
Do you have any rulers? I don't have any rulers. Remember I showed you how you can use, what you can use to make a straight line? Take out one of the pages in your book, fold it into thirds, and then increase it really hard, and you can have a nice straight edge. That was first class. We made our own straight edges.
Oh, wow.
How do you draw? Oh, that's cool.
This is my little. Oh, I still got the little edge there that she took out. Look, this. I got my You just said I just was not working.
There you go. You're welcome.
Not this.
No, you want to use paper out of your sketchbook because it's thicker paper. That's okay. You need help? Oh, stop. That's one of the best friend books.
He looked at me when I walked into breakfast. Go ahead and just shut it down. But first of all, you should just take the book. Yes, I wish. Keep it warm. Keep it warm. What?
Remember, you're doing your sketch in your book, and then you're doing your final picture. You want to be working on your final picture shortly if you haven't started it already. Just draw lighter. Don't worry. Just draw lighter. What pencil are you using? Okay. So just color lighter. Don't press so hard with it. And you'll get lighter lines and it makes it a lot easier to erase. Don't be shy with how big you think it is. You got it? Huh? You're filling that whole paper. Whole paper. Don't go too crazy with too much detail. This is just for you to see it. You want to do it big. On this one.
I know, that's why I'm sketching right now.
Yeah, so don't go too crazy don't do too much detail on your sketchbook. Put that focus onto your big picture.
I'm ready. Hit me.
You can do it. I know you can. You ladies got some good skills in here. I wouldn't be challenging you to do it if I didn't think you could.
Nay, the ruler. Someone said no idea. Oh, everybody's like,
What are you watching? Like, I'm sorry. Video on what?
I'm sorry. You broke up my
No. You can't follow a tutorial. You have to use your own thoughts. I want you to use your own ideas. I think that's awesome. That's a good sketch. Now transfer that onto your big one.
We'll be up the red. Now I'm pulling on the Brooklyn tracks on the 25th.
This is your canvas.
When the 360 train breaking news, yeah. New Yorker. I know they do. Trash. Yeah,
I had to wait. Transfer it. So tell me, what are you thinking about? Anything? So don't. So then I want you to make me some big fish bowl. Make it it bigger.
Ten
See how you don't want to
like
space?
I don't know.
Remember how you just want to space? This will bigger. So it fills in more of the
You know, I got the passwords, I see them every day.
Look what I did, I just messed it up. Just sketch out your goal and
They coming back. What you go like when you dress? Oh yeah, she a dark skin. I know. No shit, she's a dark skin. This bitch right here. This bitch wear tight shirts and wear fat ass things. Like, you ain't bitch. Why is your stomach so big?
Yes, but I want you to think about your negative space. What else can we do to fill in? Thinking about that negative position and perspective. Because right now, everything is really close. The dog is big, so it's close. The tree is big, so it's getting a little bit further away. What can you do in the background to make things look like there's more perspective? Yeah, you could do that. You could draw. Leave the house. So think about adding more to make it a full picture. Okay, and then think about your shading. Add some shading into it.
It's still red. I'm trying not to.
It's 6:30. At this point, everyone should be working on their final project board. You should be working on that final project paper. Okay? They are not coming home tonight. They are going into your art exhibit. Why not? That's what we're working on. You got time. You got 45 minutes left. 45 minutes.
You just said
Yes, you can. There's 45 minutes left. I can turn on some music. Give me a little bit of time.
I would love to play some music. I know what I was going to do, but like I don't know what I'm trying to draw like I want to draw this, but in the eye it's so I don't know how to do it.
So I would say that you're gonna wanna make the eye, you're gonna wanna make the pupil, which is the dark part, you're gonna wanna make it big. Because what happens with your eye is when light is shining at your eye, the black part goes small. And when it's dark, then the light part, then that black part goes big. So then it's not light. So I would just make your pupil bigger.
Everybody, I see him every like literally every day, negative.
What's up, girl? Okay.
Like
So just use your shading. Finish.
I hate when people say that. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I was so close to it. I don't believe it.
It's like, I wanted this movie to be cool, but
I don't believe it.
So she's looking, so you're looking at her back. You're looking at the side. Okay. So look up.
Smart.
She said,
Standing sideways. Sideways standing.
We did actually make a good thing. No, that she comes here anxiety. That's really bad anxiety. We is actually nice to that's the main reason why I'm afraid. Because I have really bad, intense anxiety. That too, like, you smoke for that too, calm me down. So I could really go to this and say, what's up, bitch? And she can really chill with me. Perfect. I love it. I'm not gonna tell
Hello, lady. Come over here with me. Come sit up here in my spot. Because we're all spread out. Okay? I want you to get started. You're going to show me your art at the very end. Okay, you're going to show me your art at the very end. Because right now, you have a final project that everybody's working on. If you have an hour to get it done. Okay? Everybody has an hour. What I want you to do, you can use anything in your art that you like, except for paint. And you're going to create a drawing. Okay? It has anything that you want, but you must follow all of the rules that we learned about. Okay? Shading, everything that, all your binders that you've learned about that I've given you. Okay, so you can use that, but I want you to create a full picture with perspective. Something in the front, something far away. Okay, nice perspective, I want nice detail.
I know it goes on the way. You don't have to say nothing.
And you're gonna create a whole picture, and you have an hour to do
If you put my name in
1 hour, and that's it, and this goes in your, this is going into the art exhibit.
okay.
So, good, this is your final project, okay? All right. I know, I told her I'd look at them after, this way she can.
Yeah, I got no Spanish.
You guys gotta find a way.
Yeah, but I actually.
You have done before?
What's my little Yes.
There may not be, because this is the classroom kit, so if things didn't get them back to me at the end of class, so first in here. Okay. Yeah, you can see if you can borrow, like behind you. Oh, there you go.
Please.
Okay, so.
Shouldn't even run into it.
Thank you. So,
Well, if I was you do 3, 4?
You're not the.
You know, and like they're watching.
That's my dad is.
My sister.
I'm not even.
Maybe she's older than me. She only taught me 1 year, son, and I taught her I taught her how to fight. You could teach her. That's sad. What's she trying to say? You can't relate. Yeah. Mark, that's what I mean. I would never send my class here unless she really. That's why I said I'll.
Yeah.
I mean, your little sister, so she found out what you say.
Come on, hit me. She hit my white skin face.
Mom's too nice to Don't see that. Okay, that's the most. Don't do that. It's gonna be in New York. I'm still going. My birthday. I'm about to celebrate my birthday this year. Now I want to have my birthday. I wish. I don't get my neck broken. And my mom. Even my mom. Yeah. I know I didn't say even my mom. I'm just trying to catch all the personal parts. It works. You just gotta blend that shit in. Like a white so all dark.
That's right. Yeah, I work in I gotta look to like, I gotta make those. I'll take like.
I'm doing that. I was like,
Oh, yeah.
I watched the what's on the menu. Turning red?
Absolutely. Good. Gotcha.
Now we've seen that they yes. It's
It sounds like they're doing work.
he was a real person.
Working on